This is I can statement number one, and I can statement number one reads, I can tell who are the main characters in my book and prove this with evidence. And this is an I can statement that you can complete at any point in your book, and I would highly recommend this being one of the very first I can statements you do because you should have an idea pretty quickly on who the main characters of your book are. As a reader, when I'm reading my book, I'm looking to see who the main characters are by looking to see which characters tend to show up the most, which characters are most important to the story. The main character of your story, the action should revolve around them. And if one of your characters happens to be the narrator of your story, then that's also a clue that they're a main character because an author is going to have a very important character tell the story. So as you think about your book, I want you to think about who are the character or characters that the action revolves around, that are most important to the story. And so for my example here, I'm going to be using our book, Freak the Mighty. And so I'm thinking about the main characters of Freak the Mighty. Who are the characters that are very important to the story? The action revolves around them. I can't take them out of the story. They're that important. And really when it comes down to it, the two characters that I think of are Freak and Max. And Freak and Max are very important characters to my story. Everything revolves around them. I can't take them out of the story. So now that I've got my two main characters, now I need to explain why they are main characters using examples from the book, making sure that I include page numbers. So I'm going to do Freak first, and I'm going to say I know that Freak is a main character because on page, and I'm just going to use actually the first page of the book, page 1, it states, I never had a brain until Freak came along. And I use that quote for an example, and I'm just going to actually write my thinking because it's always good to show my thinking as a reader, especially in these I can statements. I'm going to say, I know that Freak is a main character because he is mentioned by our narrator, Max, on the first page. He also is in all of the main action of the story. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to repeat this for Max. And so what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to think of specific examples in the story where Max is a main character. And really, I think I can honestly use the first page as well too for telling that Max is a main character. Now I'm not saying that you should always use the first page for your I can statements, but in this case we know right away. So I'm going to say I know that Max is a main character because on page 1 he is our narrator. I know that he is a main character because he is narrating the story. So what I've done now is I've given examples for how both Max and Freak are main characters. And then the final thing I need to do now is I need to list the minor characters. Minor characters are characters that are in the story but aren't as important to the story. They are not necessarily in every scene, every page. They show up every once in a while, they leave. They're still important to the story, but the story doesn't really revolve around them or it isn't centered on them. When I'm thinking about characters in Freak the Mighty, because that is my book title, so I'm going to type that again. And notice how I'm underlining my book title. I always want to do that to show that it's a book title. And so, minor characters in my story, Freak the Mighty, are, well, I can think of like Graham is an example. Another example is Grim. These are characters that are important, but they aren't in the entire story. Gwen is another character. I could keep this list going on. I think Tony D is another minor character. Killer Kane is a minor character. These are all characters that are important, but they're not in the entire story. They're just in parts of them. So those are the 3 steps that I needed to complete for this I can statement. To review what they are really quickly again, I listed what the main characters of the story were. I gave evidence from the text explaining how I knew that each one was a main character. And then finally, I listed my minor characters. And these are the steps you need to take for I can statement number 1.